Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at injustice, power, and the choices we make when faced with unimaginable loss.
Ooh, that's heavy stuff.
It is, and I'm so glad to have you here to help us unpack all of this. We're going to be looking at excerpts from Malcolm Gladwell's David and Goliath.
Okay.
We're going to be focusing on Mike Reynolds and Wilma Dirksen, two parents who each experienced just the unthinkable, the murder of their children.
Yeah, some really tough stories. It's a powerful juxtaposition, though. How do people navigate these similar tragedies in such profoundly different ways?
Exactly. And that's what we're going to kind of try to figure out. Like, what can we learn about power, retribution, forgiveness? It's going to be a fascinating discussion.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how it all unfolds.
Me too. So let's start with Mike Reynolds. His 18-year-old daughter, Kimber, was murdered in Fresno, California back in 1992.
Oh, Fresno. I've been there.
The perpetrators were Joe Davis and Douglas Walker. And they were crystal meth addicts who had already attempted a carjacking earlier that day.
Wow. I mean, the brutality of that crime, it's just striking. Walker later said that he shot Kimber just because of the way she was looking at him.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just chilling.
Yeah.
Random. Senseless.
You can't even grasp it. I can't even imagine the depth of grief and rage that Reynolds must have felt.
Yeah.
But he didn't succumb to just despair.
Right.
He channeled those emotions into a relentless pursuit of change.
He did. And, he became a very powerful advocate, harnessing the media, pushing for sweeping changes to California's criminal justice system. His solution, the three strikes law, the idea, deter crime by significantly increasing the penalties, especially for repeat offenders.
Okay, so for those who aren't familiar with three strikes, a second serious felony conviction, this would lead to double the usual sentence, and a third strike, that's 25 years to life.
That's right. No exceptions. It was a massive experiment. Gladwell calls it the largest of its kind in American history. California's prison population, it doubled in a short span.
Oh, wow.
And the question is, though, did it actually work?
Yeah, I mean, that's what everybody wants to know.
Right. And that's where Gladwell brings in this very interesting concept called the inverted U-shaped curve.
Oh, okay. I'm intrigued. So tell me more about this curve. I have a feeling it applies to more than just, the criminal justice system.
You're totally right. It does. The inverted U-shape, it basically means that more isn't always better. So past a certain point, if you keep increasing something, whether it's punishment or even something positive like motivation, it can actually lead to, diminishing returns or even negative consequences.
Oh, I see.
Think of it like overwatering a plant.
Yeah.
Too much of a good thing can be harmful.
Too much of a good thing can be bad. Okay. So applying that to three strikes, are we saying that Reynolds was wrong to push for these harsher sentences?
Well, not necessarily. But Gladwell raises some concerns, along with a lot of criminologists at the time.
Okay.
Their argument. Criminals, especially ones driven by addiction or desperation, they don't often rationally weigh consequences before acting.
That makes sense.
So, longer sentences might not deter them as intended.
Yeah. And didn't they also say that these longer sentences would disproportionately impact younger offenders?
Exactly.
The ones that are actually statistically more likely to just kind of age out of criminal behavior anyway?
Yeah, and mass incarceration, that has far-reaching consequences, right? Destabilizes communities, breaks up families, and creates this collateral damage that, kind of ironically, can lead to more crime in the long run.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So even though crime rates did go down in California after three strikes, similar trends were seen across the U.S., making it difficult to isolate the law's true impact. So it's a complex issue.
It is very complex. And to really kind of get the depth of Reynolds' drive, Gladwell shares this powerful anecdote. He confronts the owner of the Daily Planet, that's the restaurant where his daughter had dinner, before her murder.
Oh, wow.
And she was complaining about the negative impact, his activism was having on her business.
Yeah. Okay, wow. That must have been a very tense encounter.
It was. Reynolds' response, "It'll be over when my daughter comes back."
Wow.
I think that single statement really encapsulates the enduring nature of his grief, that futility of trying to achieve true closure just through punishment alone. No matter how harsh the sentence, Kimber would never come back.
It's a reminder that while justice is really important, it can't always erase the pain of loss. It leaves us wondering, if there might be another way to approach these situations, a path that leads to healing rather than just perpetuating a cycle of pain.
Right.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder if focusing solely on retribution, even when it feels totally justified, if it ultimately leads to a dead end.
That's a good point.
Is there a different way to navigate the immense pain of loss?
Well, that's where Wilma Dirkson's story comes in. Her experience, it offers this really powerful contrast to Mike Reynolds.
Okay.
Her story takes us to Winnipeg, Canada, 1992.
Okay.
Wilma's 13-year-old daughter, Candace, disappeared one afternoon. She was later found, she had frozen to death after being abducted and tied up.
Oh my God.
Can you imagine that? The
It-
collective grief and fear, it just gripped the entire community.
It's every parent's worst nightmare. You mentioned that their experience offered a contrast. Did they also push for legal changes like Reynolds did?
Their response was very different. While they were, understandably devastated, there was this pivotal encounter that really shifted their whole trajectory.
Oh.
Gladwell describes this, it's chilling, really. This stranger, he shows up at their door, unannounced, right after Candace's body was found.
I mean, it sounds like something out of a movie. Who was the stranger?
It was the parent of another murdered child. He'd become consumed by this pursuit of justice. His life was just overtaken by bitterness and anger.
Wow.
And this man, almost a cautionary figure, he wanted to warn the Dirksons about the path, the path they might be heading down, if they weren't careful. He was like a living testament to the destructive power of unmitigated rage and this pursuit of revenge.
I mean, just to see the potential consequences of your own grief reflected back at you like that, it must have been incredibly sobering.
It must have been. And unlike Reynolds, who is driven by that desire for retribution, the Dirksons took this stranger's warning to heart. They made a conscious decision to forge a different path.
So what did that path look like? I mean, did they just try to bury their grief and pretend like nothing happened?
Not at all, no. Their response was, it was unexpected, but also incredibly powerful. At Candace's funeral, they made this public statement expressing their desire to actually share love with the perpetrator. And they emphasized forgiveness as a way to kind of break the cycle of pain.
Forgiveness. I mean, that seems almost impossible given the circumstances.
Yeah, it is a radical notion, especially when we're talking about such a horrific crime.
Yeah.
But it's important to understand the context of the Dirksons' Mennonite faith.
Oh, okay. So can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. So Mennonites have a really long history of facing persecution for their pacifist beliefs.
Okay.
They have this deep understanding of the limits of formal justice systems, and a really strong emphasis on forgiveness and reconciliation. Your faith, it isn't just a set of rules. It's like a way of life that just shapes their worldview and informs their responses to even the most, challenging situations.
So their faith really did play a significant role in their decision to pursue forgiveness.
It did.
It wasn't just, like an emotional response, but really a deliberate choice rooted in their core beliefs.
Exactly. And, it wasn't easy. Years later, the police actually identified Candace's murderer using DNA evidence.
Oh, wow.
A man named Mark Grant. He already had a history of sexual offenses.
I can't even imagine the range of emotions the Dirksons must have felt. I mean, relief that the case was solved, but also probably, just a resurgence of grief, anger, knowing the details of what actually happened to Candace.
It was a lot. Wilma, she talks about being overwhelmed by these thoughts of revenge, just wishing for his death. The trial, it brought all those horrific details to light, forcing her to confront the depravity of his actions. She described Grant as puffed up, pasty-looking,
Right.
just filled with this anger and hostility towards her family.
I can't fathom how someone could inflict such pain and then direct their anger at the victim's family.
Yeah.
Was Wilma able to maintain her commitment to forgiveness?
She acknowledges it was a constant struggle. But then Gladwell highlights this remarkable turning point. Wilma realizes that she needs to forgive a friend who had hurt her deeply.
So she's dealing with the trauma of her daughter's murder, and now she's also working through this personal betrayal. That's just, it seems like almost too much to bear.
It does. But in that act of forgiving her friend, Wilma discovers this powerful parallel to forgiving Grant.
Okay.
She realizes that forgiveness, it can't be selective.
Right.
It has to be a principle. It's not just, a fleeting feeling that comes and goes based on how we feel about a person.
Yeah. That's a profound insight.
It is.
It suggests that forgiveness, in its truest sense, isn't about condoning or excusing wrongdoing. It's about making a conscious choice to release yourself from the grip of anger and resentment.
Exactly. Wilma recognizes that clinging to that anger and bitterness, it would just destroy her family, her relationships. And she refused to let Grant's actions have that kind of power over her life. She chose a different path, a path of radical forgiveness. It's a testament to the power of choosing, love over hate, even in the darkest of times.
It's really incredible to think about these two stories, side by side.
It is.
Both families experienced such a profound loss, but their responses to that loss, I mean, they couldn't have been more different.
No, they couldn't have.
Reynolds embodies this idea of the righteous giant, wielding the power of the legal system to try to, fix a broken system.
Right.
And then you have Dirksen, who chooses this path of, quiet resistance, finding strength and forgiveness.
And, their outcomes were just as different, right? So Reynolds, he achieves legislative success with 3 strikes.
Right.
But the question of its effectiveness,
Hmm.
it's still debated.
Right, right.
Did it actually deter crime, or did it just lead to mass incarceration?
Yeah, with all its consequences.
Exactly. Social and economic.
Yeah.
The debate continues. California is still dealing with the legacy of that experiment.
Yeah.
Dirksen, on the other hand, she found a measure of peace and healing through forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
It's a deeply personal victory, one that really transcends the limitations of the legal system.
It makes you think about our conventional notions of power. We always think of power as this external thing, something to be, seized, imposed through force. But these stories reveal this different kind of power, an inner strength, It comes from choosing empathy, compassion, even forgiveness when faced with unimaginable pain.
Right.
It's Dirksen found a way to just break the cycle of suffering, not just for herself, but potentially for others as well.
And Gladwell, he brings in another example to illustrate this point. The story of André Trocmé and the villagers of Le Chambon-sur-Lignon in France. This was during World War II. They were mostly Huguenots.
Huguenots.
Yeah, a Protestant group. They faced centuries of persecution.
Oh, okay.
They understood what it meant to be, marginalized, the target of hatred and violence.
Hmm.
And that experience, it really shaped their response to the Nazi occupation.
Okay.
So they drew on their own history of resistance, and they defied the Nazis.
Wow.
They created this safe haven for Jewish refugees, saving thousands of lives.
So they used their experience as David's to confront a Goliath.
That's right. They understood the limitations of brute force, and they chose a different kind of fight, a fight for humanity, for compassion. I mean, in the face of overwhelming evil, they didn't have weapons or armies, but they had something much more powerful, this deep commitment to their values, a willingness to act on those values, even when it put their own lives at risk.
All these stories are so different, but they all kind of raise these really profound questions about how we respond to injustice in our own lives. I mean, whether we're dealing with personal betrayals or systemic issues, we're always faced with choices about how to engage with the world. What do these stories tell us about our own assumptions about power, justice, forgiveness?
It's easy to think that these are just these extreme situations, removed from our daily experiences. But I think the principles, they're universal.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in a situation where you felt powerless? You were treated unfairly, hurt by somebody's actions?
Yeah.
How did you respond?
Yeah.
Did you try to fight back, seek revenge, or maybe just withdraw and protect yourself? What if there's another way?
Right.
These stories kind of suggest that true strength isn't always about wielding external power or demanding retribution. Sometimes the most courageous act is to choose a different kind of fight, a fight for understanding, for empathy, maybe even forgiveness.
It doesn't mean condoning the wrongdoing, but it does mean refusing to let the actions of others dictate your path.
Exactly. And in choosing that path, maybe we discover this reservoir of inner strength, a strength that allows us to break free from these cycles of pain and create a more just and compassionate world.
You've definitely given me a lot to think about today. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. We hope you enjoyed it, and maybe, just maybe, we've given you some food for thought. See you next time.